do the introduction. Maybe you can talk about some of our upgrades.
All right. Wait, is this episode 5?
Yeah, it is.
Welcome to episode 5 of the Two Islands podcast. Today we have Julian with the ring light,
Yes, sir.
and we got myself with a new mic. Not recording off of the built-in computer mic anymore. Got a little upgrade. Upgrades are coming in steady. They're coming in steady. We're gonna get the nice mic arm soon enough. It'll come in due time.
I'm gonna be getting my mic soon, and then I'm also gonna be getting like a new camera that can clip onto the back of my computer, so the audio quality and the video quality is gonna go up. So hopefully that'll mean the subscribers will go up.
Yeah. So people on YouTube, they'll have a better viewing experience. Everybody else on Spotify, Apple, Overcast, you'll be enjoying a bit better audio quality than what we used to have. Yeah.
Right. I mean, now that we're done with the introduction, now we can just talk.
All right.
I haven't been paying much attention to my garden recently.
You haven't been.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's one of those projects where I was really into it at first, and then now I watch it grow, but I know that if I was out there more often than I am right now, I'd be doing better. But I don't know. It's still cool to watch.
So right now,
Some of my plants are dying.
oh, they're dying.
Yeah, like my tomatoes, I think they have like a certain lifespan. Like once
Hmm.
they started like producing tomatoes, like it's like branches from the bottom started dying and it started working its way upwards, and now it's
Yeah.
reaching the top. It's kind of interesting. Like the whole plant is like dark brown and dead, but like it's still fruiting. Like that's how
Hmm.
much energy putting into the tomatoes. It's almost poetic. I don't know.
Yeah, because it starts from, I guess, the roots, and then it kind of just invades the entire thing.
Okay. How do you define success?
Hmm. Okay. I feel like we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, actually, before we recorded this one. Um,
I'm sorry, I have terrible memory. I have like
just
goldfish type of memory.
I guess we talked about like how when we first started, um, kind of our expectations for how we thought
Oh,
people would
yeah.
find the podcast and kind of the growth behind what we would be doing.
Mhm.
And I think success is kind of one of those things that a lot of people, hmm, I guess a lot of people have put it or changed how they think about what success is just with the emergence of social media, I think.
Mhm.
Just because a lot of people now see success as making like $200,000 or driving like this really nice car, um,
Mhm.
and be like becoming a millionaire or having like 2 million followers on Instagram and stuff like that. And I feel like,
Or
I
400
guess,
views on the YouTube video.
uh, thanks so much to everybody that watched that first episode. I think just with what success used to mean, it kind of just used to mean like you went through school, you found a job that you liked or a job that you could tolerate, and you started a family, and that was it. And like,
Yeah,
if you could do that, just that alone, like you're set, you're successful, right?
yeah.
But I think a lot more people nowadays have kind of pushed back against that mentality of like, if you can find a way to start a family, um, or you just find a job that gives you enough money so that you can pay the bills and just get through day to day,
Mm.
that you'd be fine. But I think now we're moving towards success being like at any point you want, you can just drop everything you're doing and go on a trip, and it not affect just your situation at all.
Yeah.
And I think that definition of what success is making a lot more people feel like they're not worthy or what they're doing isn't worthy.
Mm. I would disagree. I think depending on where you stand socioeconomically, um, the idea of success is on a bit of a spectrum, kind of like what you were saying earlier, like with some people just wanting to like pay the bills and stuff like that. Um, if I was like a single mother working like 2 or 3 jobs trying to support my kids and whatever, me, for example, feeding them, keeping clothes on them, getting helping them get their diploma, that would be success to me, you know. Um, it's interesting. The first example that I thought of with that was the Renaissance, right? During that time, we were coming out of a period where people didn't need to be busting their back in the sun all day just to like make sure the sheep are fed and the grain is picked. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
now, now they got to a point because that brought them their fulfillment, right? Like,
Mm,
in order for me to survive, this is what I have to do, and if I can accomplish this, then I'm happy and I feel fulfilled. And to
right.
them, that was their success, right? Um, Once we entered the Renaissance and we had more technological developments, then now people had more time in the day. Coming into the Renaissance, now people, and this isn't like specific to the Renaissance. This is just with any technological development. This light, dude, it's killing. It's just killing
I know it's killing me.
it. um, Now people have more time in the day to think about things. Now we advance in areas such as philosophy and yeah, those types of areas where a lot of thinking is required. Now you get works like this is a bit of a leap, but do you know The Stranger by Albert Camus?
No, I don't.
It's a piece of existentialist writing. Anyway, it's a book about this guy who kind of believes that his life doesn't really matter, and that's the whole thing behind existentialism. Um, but you see, when he was of the upper middle to upper class, so
Hmm.
that luxury of thinking, or that luxury of being able to have the time to think and do those kinds of things, is at the cost of less fulfillment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, because he didn't have to bust his butt to like make a living for himself, right? Like
Right.
there's like pieces in the book where he like where a lot of this existentialist thought occurred was when he was just sitting at a cafe watching people walk by. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. I think success is different depending on your situation. I think that's based off of your socioeconomic status. You know?
True. I think there's also a sense though that not to say that people don't see that like how do I say this? Not to say that people who are in a different socioeconomic background or are in like middle class or upper class don't have different definitions of success, but I feel like there's always that one overarching one that everybody thinks about. And I think
Mm,
regardless
yeah, yeah,
of your situation and how you feel fulfilled, um, there is now I feel like a development where people kind of have that overarching term of success that they always are thinking about, even when they are providing for the people around them or are doing really great for themselves, honestly. But
yeah. It's
they
true.
have that. I guess I'm thinking more about people our age
Yeah,
and kind of what Gen Z, I guess, is thinking in a sense. Where like even when a lot of us are doing things that are honestly like mind blowing, and are impacting the world in different ways, we still kind of have that sense of thinking.
Richard,
Yes,
can you bring me some goldfish?
there are goldfishes on the table. You can grab a bag. You can grab
Okay.
it.
Alright.
All right.
There he is.
There he is, the one and only. There's always that type of success that we all kind of think about, even
Mhm.
if we're not striving towards that version of success. But there's always an idealized sense of, if I had this money, I could do this, 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 and this. And I think there's probably
Yeah.
always been that sort of sentiment, but I think because now we can see it so easily with social media, it makes people feel more inferior than they would have been in
Yeah.
in previous generations.
Mhm.
Ricky, can you open the goldfish?
Ricardi, there's other people in the tea room who could open the goldfish for you.
No,
But he needs you to open the goldfish. So funny.
no.
Yeah, I'll open the goldfish for you.
Not sponsored by Goldfish.
Here you go.
Ew.
Interesting. Yeah, like what you were talking about earlier just made me think about how success is really relative. Like we're talking about it with the podcast. I was
Mhm.
feeling out because the views have been haven't been as high as I thought they would be. But it's only because really in the first episode it did so well, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just because people were curious because it's the first episode, right? Like, what are these guys up to? So now, with the first one having like 430 views and like our most recent episode having 50, I was like, well, what's the deal, man? But like, it was interesting and almost, not almost, it was humbling to think back and think we were only expecting like 20 to 30 views on the first episode. If we had 50 views right now, then that would be like a huge success.
Right.
And comparing that to social media, like with the way that the framing of social media is already problematic in and of itself because those who are seen as the standard give unrealistic depictions of their life. But then when other people who don't have that look at that, they look at what they have right in front of them and they're like, well, this is terrible. I feel terrible about myself. I should be more successful, you know? And like you see, it's all like clickbait, you know? Like you see these people who are like, yeah, I was a college dropout and now I'm making $2 million a year. I'm sitting in my yacht. I have my Ferrari right behind me. What are you doing? Well, I guess I'm a real loser.
I guess I'm a complete nobody. Because I'm already 19 and I'm looking on social media and I see this 16-year-old with 8 million followers driving this nice car. I don't even know if they have their permit yet, but they're in a nice car. Just like, I don't know. It kind of just makes me think, like, what am I doing with my life right now? Like,
Yeah.
I
But I
don't
think
know.
that's what's generationally different about us. Like for us, with all the instant gratification, everyone's looking for the fast track, right?
Right.
And I think that makes our lives all around less fulfilling for us. But you look at our parents and grandparents, their idea of success was finding a job early on and sticking it out until they retired. That was success, you know, because you showed dedication. But for us, like, for example, we want to make 4 episodes of a podcast and expect to be viral, Julian. When really that's never the case. It's never the case, you know?
Right.
It's interesting.
And it's like, because I guess we didn't see that almost, or because of what our definition of success became after that first episode,
Mhm.
it was almost like, because we didn't see that consistently grow right away, it was
Yeah.
almost just like, man, I don't think we're doing the right things. Looks
Yeah.
like we're going to just either, I don't know, man. I don't know if I feel this anymore, man. I don't
Yeah.
know if this is it.
Yeah.
And we're already looking towards that next thing to bring us that instant success, that
Yeah.
like almost instant gratification. And I think that's something that a lot of us lack is patience.
Yeah.
Um, and I even look at like I guess to your garden, for example,
Yeah.
the way that you're talking about your garden and how you at the beginning saw all these plants flourishing and the tomatoes just growing at the seams,
Yeah.
and you kind of put it to the side a little bit, and now it's starting to die out. And it's not that you're like letting nature take its course with the garden, but it's almost like if I guess I don't know if I can say this, but like 60 years ago, right? If I
Hmm.
started a garden,
Hmm.
I would have been consistently on that garden every single day.
Yeah.
And like, let's say I was my age now back then, like whoever was in charge of that garden, or if it was just me in charge of it, I would have been like, discipline, discipline, discipline. I have to do this every single day,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna stick with it regardless, no matter what. And I
Hmm.
feel like now it's more of if I don't see success here, what's the next thing that I can get to that can bring me that success? And I think
Yeah.
that's in how a lot of us Gen Z individuals are going to be thinking about jobs and
Yeah.
employment. I think it's going to be like we're at a job for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
And if we don't see ourselves at that successful point, we're going to be looking and hunting for that next
Yeah.
job that makes us even 15,000 more dollars, 5,000 more dollars, 200 more dollars, and we're going
Yeah.
to leapfrog to that. And if we don't see ourselves successful there, we're going to leapfrog to something else and leapfrog to something else. And I think
Yeah.
that kind of mentality is just
Would you call
really
it
different.
selfish?
I don't, oh, I don't know if I,
Because you think about it, right? Like, like these kids nowadays, like the way you're describing it, it just sounds so self-absorbed. Like,
yeah,
oh, I don't like as someone who's hired as an employer, right? And I see this kid hopping around. I'm like, well, he's just trying to chase the bag and chase status, right? But if
yeah,
I'm hiring someone, I need someone who's for the team. You don't make the team better by only sticking around for 2 years.
exactly.
Is it selfish?
Ooh. But then there's also the point of like, I guess one thing I'm thinking about as we're saying this is just the mentality around Silicon Valley and kind of the um, standard that's been set where it's like they bring in all this new talent from all these different places, and within one
Hmm.
to 2 years they're gone like that. And I
Hmm.
think mentality around hiring people who are like the new, young, fresh individuals who are bringing all these ideas to the table and then cutting them loose like that afterwards
Yeah.
has almost permeated throughout our entire society. Where it's
Yeah.
like, even with our phones, right? Like I have
Hmm.
like the phone that I had before my new phone. I only had it for 3 years, and
Hmm.
at that point I was already like, okay, no, I need something new. I need the new thing. I need
Yeah.
the new thing right now. And
Yeah.
it's like that sort of constant need for something better and something new
Yeah.
and something different, I feel like has just permeated every single aspect of our lives. Like even in relationships, I think
Yeah.
people see relationships as like if you're in a relationship with someone for 6 months, everybody's like, "Oh my God, how do you do it? How have you been with this person for so long?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute." Like every single time, like I go to talk with my grandmother, uh, or I speak to these older individuals. They've been with the same person since they were like 20 or 19 or 18, and they've
Yeah.
been with that person all the way until they're 70. And like
Yeah.
now, me talking with my friends, like we're like, "You're still with her after 4 weeks?
Oh.
She, you must be,
Oh,
you
someone's
must be
whipped.
somebody's whipped." Like I think that sort of mentality has just permeated all and every aspect of our lives. Just that need for something different, something new, something better.
That's interesting. Um, it's interesting that you bring up the idea of relationships because I think it has a lot to do with this social media thing that we're talking about. Um, when you see everything else that's out in the horizon, you you don't appreciate what's right in front of you, you know?
Right.
And it's really interesting. I think that's more a result of having options, you know? And what I was saying, it's interesting you brought up relationships is because don't you find it so interesting that with, of course, the culture and the gender roles are different in this context, but arranged marriages, right?
Yeah.
They don't have options. It's this is it.
This
You
is
have
it.
one option. Take it. And they have, well, not every relationship is good. From what I've heard, some of them do have very loving, committed relationships, and they're happy with their lives. Um, but in our heads, more options are better, right? You have more
Yeah.
selection. But the thing is that only makes you more unhappy. Like I think we talked about this in my friendship class actually. Like it's scientifically proven that people get more unhappy with more
When the more
options.
options that they have. Yeah. I
Yeah.
actually learned about this. I was reading this book on marketing, I think, and it was talking a lot about like how Amazon, like different retailers on Amazon pretty much like have their products and like the different colors that you can choose for like certain products. And I
Yeah.
think they found that what with products that had like 5 or fewer options versus
Hmm.
products that had 8 or more options, people would typically actually like add to cart and continue through that purchase with when they had like 5 or fewer options. Like when they had less options
Yeah.
than the people who had like or the products that had like 8 plus options. Because you kind of second guess yourself and think, is this really the right thing? Should I get this color?
Yeah.
Or should I get that color? Should I get this color? And you kind of end up second guessing yourself enough to where you don't even end up making the purchase of the item. And so
Yeah.
that was just something that like
But you think about it, the only difference between those products is the color.
yeah,
It's the color.
it's
But
just
now when we're talking about, if we use that as like an analogy for um like in relationships, for example, now you're talking about different people that you might find attractive. Like it's
right.
not just the color that's changing now.
And it's
It's
like
interesting.
when I can just go to my phone and hop on one of basically hundreds of dating apps and just be
Yeah.
like, I have this option and this option and this option, which I don't, but like some people do, and like they can do that on their phone, right?
Hey, hit up Richie. Hey, Richie's single. He said, "Get me some options."
Right? I could just go through my phone and like,
Sorry, I'm still hung up on that. There's all these options. Not that I have these options, but poor guy.
oh man.
Richie's
No,
looking for
we're
a steady
definitely
2 month relationship.
but
We were saying?
just the fact that that can happen and like I feel like a lot of people end up second guessing themselves and thinking about what they might be able to obtain versus what they have right in front of them, like you said.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I actually wrote a poem about this over quarantine just because it was bothering me so much. Um, and one of the lines I wrote in there. You see, I don't know if this I read this line somewhere else because it immediately came to my head when I was writing it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was something along the lines of like when I look too closely at the dirt on my toes, I can't see the gold on my heels. Um,
Mm,
and that was supposed to be like it was the whole poem was talking about like looking out at the horizon and how beautiful the horizon is, right? But you never
yeah.
get there. You can never reach the horizon. And
Right.
that's what's so maddening about it is that you can always observe it from afar, but you'll never reach it. It's almost like the end of a rainbow, right?
Hmm.
But the thing is, when you look at the horizon and your toes, your dirty toes, that's like all the work that you put in and all like the grueling effort that you've done. And all you
Right.
can see is dirt at your toes, right? If you have that type of mindset, you miss the gold at your heels. You miss everything that you have done. Because while you might be looking out at someone else's horizon, right? I look at someone else's success in social media. All I can see is dirt at my toes, right? But if
Yeah.
someone behind me is looking out at me and I'm their horizon, all they can see is the gold at my heels.
Right. I
So
think.
while
Ooh.
I'm fully equipped to be as happy as I am, being someone else's horizon, all I can do is look forward. And while that may drive my success, it also means that I'll never be happy.
Oh, wow. Words of a
Sorry.
true English major. Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. Oh
So
my
yeah, I'm
god.
thinking about maybe doing some gardening later on, maybe taking out the trash.
And I think that's not even just applicable to relationships, but just in general to success. I think the saying like the classic saying that money can't buy happiness, right?
Yeah.
And I think it kind of stems from people um believing that once you reach that point of success that you think will make you happy, you end up realizing that there's more to it. Like you always have to keep on going for more success and more success and more success, and you'll never really end up being at a place where you feel satisfied and you feel fulfilled, right?
Yeah.
um and I think just the way that you explained it, because two people could be standing looking out at the same horizon, right? But then that
Hmm.
there's one person who looks down at their toes,
Hmm.
and the other person is just looking out their horizon, just enjoying it all, taking it all in, right? And the other
Yeah.
person who's right there with them, looking out at the same thing, can't do that.
What do you mean?
Like they can't enjoy the view that they work so hard to see because they're stuck looking down at their toes. I think hiking's a good example of like how I want to make this kind of explained. Like there'll be one person who, regardless of the trek that they have to do to get to the top of the mountain,
Hmm.
once they're at the top of the mountain, they can really take that time, sit there and enjoy the view, right?
Yeah.
But there's one person who goes up with that mountain with them, gets to the top of the mountain, but can only think about their legs cramping up, their back being in pain, the sweat
Hmm.
on their brow getting into their eye. And they don't
Yeah.
really take that time to just enjoy all the hard work that they did
Mm.
to get to that point.
I think you and I view the horizon a little differently. And well, that like your interpretation is really interesting. Like the way that I see it is just the next thing. The horizon is the next thing. Like yes, it's a beautiful view, but it's
Mm-hmm.
something that I want and I can't reach. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, so your idea of the horizon is just appreciating the hard work that you've done. Like
I mean,
that's something that you can observe. I mean, I'm not saying that you're wrong because this is
no,
your idea of the horizon.
that's just kind of how I was thinking about it. It's kind of like
Mhm.
the point where you feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
But um, I think with your definition of what the horizon is, it is that idealistic mindset or that idealistic view that you have for what you're doing that you'll never be able to reach.
Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So
But I
I
like
think
your interpretation as well. You know.
the way that you explained it to me, I even thought of it differently or interpreted it differently than exactly how you were explaining it to me.
Because that's
I took it
indicative of our different worldviews, right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That that that
That's crazy.
that's
I
that's what's
just learned
doing
a
this
lot
right
about
now.
myself in that conversation. That's
I
wow.
just learned a lot about what's different between us. Um, I guess you could say I'm a hustler. No, but it seems like you're one to take the time to take things in and like really appreciate it for what it is. Me on the other hand, like maybe I try really people who might know me like who might know me on a personal level might laugh at this. I try hard to be humble. I try to be humble. Um, so for me, once I see a horizon. See, the whole idea of the horizon is what's beautiful about it is kind of like the sky, right? That's what sticks out the most in my head is the sky.
Right.
The earth underneath it, you can always walk towards, right? But you can
Hmm.
never approach the sky. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, so for me, when I reach that point, when I've walked all the way over there, um, I just think like, okay, now I've all I think is that I've completed this. This is now the new norm. Like,
Hmm.
don't spend time like getting all excited about it or like patting yourself in the back too much about it because it's time for the next thing.
Right.
Like sitting here and just being content with what you have doesn't get you any further. Um, but you see, that's the whole thing. You miss out on the horizon that you're talking about, which is the beauty of putting in the work to get to where you are. See, my idea of the horizon, oh, this is so interesting because you brought up hiking, right?
Yeah.
When I think of the horizon, I think of imagine the whole earth was just like a plateau. The whole thing, there was no topography to it. So it's me just walking in a straight line forever, right?
Hmm.
And in that way, while I'm moving forward, all I can see is the horizon. But for you, you're starting at the bottom of the mountain.
Yeah.
And when you get to the top of it, that's when you see the horizon. At that point, you can't go up any further. All you can do is appreciate the horizon that you've worked to be able to observe. And I think that's really interesting.
Oh man. Whew.
And I think that see, I don't know why our views are different like that. Um, Maybe it's our different experiences with social media, the way we've been brought up. Um, I don't know. Like in high school and middle school, whenever I do things like, oh, you were on president's list, or you got into like National Honor Society or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like in my head, it was always like, okay, it's good that you did that, but now it's time for the next thing, right? Sitting down and appreciating things at all, because like as we talked about in previous episodes, I like just like fiddling with stuff, looking down at the grass, playing with sand, whatever. Um, but in my head, once you really stop and you like sit there and pat yourself on the back, like, wow, look at what we did. Like
Hmm.
you lose sight of what's in front of you and what you still have to do, right? And in that way, I try and stay humbled about my accomplishments. Maybe that makes me a less happy person than yourself. I wouldn't know. Um, but I'm interested to hear why you think we think different that way.
I think for me, it was definitely something that I guess just my idea or of what success is and like getting to that point where you can just appreciate what you have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's an idea that I only really started to think about recently,
Mm-hmm.
just because I really did have that same mentality of cool, I got all A's for my classes this quarter, but how can I study so that I don't have to spend as much time doing this work and still maintain these same grades?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that mentality of improvement and needing to improve regardless of whatever success you may accomplish or achieve is what drives people to really do great things. But then there's also that sense of if you don't appreciate what you do have and what you have done,
Mm-hmm.
you'll really get to that spot where, or maybe you'll never get to the point where you can appreciate what you have done. I don't know.
Dirt in the toes, gold in the heels, baby.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking like maybe, at least for me, I just didn't really think about what I was doing as much in terms of it being like, wow, you accomplished so much. I was just doing things because I wanted to do them or I wanted to make my life easier. So I filled it up with all of these different things that I was involved in just so that I could always be doing something and not really have that downtime to like think about why I am where I am. I think the difference between high school and what I was doing, and Dartmouth and what I was doing was that during high school, all the different clubs and activities and programs that I was involved in um, brought me fulfillment because I was involved in those programs. But at Dartmouth, I think there was a point where I wasn't being fulfilled by all the things that I was involved in, and it kind of came to a point of like, I do need to take time to myself and figure this stuff out, just
Mhm.
because I'm not as satisfied as I was in high
Mhm.
school doing what I thought would make me happy. And I think that's kind of where things came to a head and I had to like really reevaluate.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to talk about like my experience with baseball, but that would require a lot. Just because in baseball, I was always really bad. Like I had a lot of potential, but I was always really bad. just because, just because like I was a very late bloomer. Um, I didn't get any sense of athleticism or coordination until puberty. Um, and my environment in baseball in Hawaii wasn't very good, and me not being very good to begin with, on top of the kind of toxic environment, meant that I wasn't a very good player. But I stuck with it because I loved the game. Um, and it's interesting because I got to college, right? Um, I decided that I didn't want to try out for the varsity team because it's not what I wanted for myself after my experience in high school, after my negative experience in high school. Um, so I tried out or I started playing club baseball,
Yeah.
and then I was just a different player. I a completely different player. Like I remember in high school, I actually didn't have an at bat in all of high school. All of high school for my school team, I played one out, one out in all of high school varsity baseball. I was telling you about this earlier.
Yeah.
I get to college and I'm playing club, and it's club baseball, right? It's not varsity, but it's nothing to
Hmm.
knock, right? I'm still playing against competitive schools, and we're a
Right.
competitive team. All of a sudden, like I was playing every single game. I uh, I was hitting every single game. Like there was like a streak where I was hitting like a double every single game. I'm like, it was crazy because now for me, being able to play the game, like be on the field and play the game, that brought me so much happiness. And that was for me, that brought a nice end to my story in baseball, if that is to be the end of it. Just playing club baseball in college because I was happy and I got to play, which is something that I never got my whole baseball. I don't really know where I'm going with this. Although I didn't play for the varsity team, and if you
Hmm.
think about success, you would want to play team, right? I'm not playing on
Right.
the varsity team, but I'm playing and I'm happy. So for me, I am now settled because my idea of success within sports varies between sports, right? I was never
Right.
good at baseball. I was never good at baseball until recently. And not that I'm good now. I'm able to play. um, um, so in that, I was very happy because I've been playing baseball since I was like 8 or 9, and it's taken me 10 years to be able to hit the ball and play on the field and be competitive, right?
Yeah.
But then there's other sports that I've played, like swim and water polo, um, and even rowing. Although this statement doesn't apply to rowing, where I was very new to it, very late in the game. Like I started swimming when I was a junior in high school. I started water polo when I was a senior, um, where I was good at it very quickly. And for me, that sense of success and fulfillment was in
Hmm.
being at the bottom of the bucket and working as hard as I could to compete with everyone else. Um, and for me, my idea of success, going back to what we were saying earlier, coming full circle, um, is the instant gratification, right? For
Yeah.
me, I was improving really quickly in these sports in the beginning because anyone does, right? You're new at it, right? The learning curve
Hmm.
is going to be pretty steep because you pick up the skills quickly. Once that started slowing down, is when my motivation really like got
So
nothing,
just
right?
died.
Yeah. My first my first season in swim, uh, I broke 30 second freestyle in my first swim meet. and
Wow.
I, I didn't know it when I got out of school, but apparently that was a big deal. And I am that success.
Hmm.
How do you even call it? Can you only have success only after you worked for it? Because I was only at it for one season.
Yeah, because it's
Anyways,
just like you kind of walked into it and you didn't realize that was a big accomplishment until people told you. And I
no,
think,
but like, can you consider it success if I've only been working at it for like, well, I think I was only training for like 3 months. That doesn't seem like success to me, honestly.
yeah, because like if you're looking at it like that, like the 3 months that you did swim or to get to that point,
Yeah,
and the 10 years you've put into baseball to
yeah,
get to the point you got into baseball, right?
yeah.
And you just contrast those two things. It's like, I know those hitting those doubles during club must have felt like absolute magic.
It did. It felt like I was the players that I always watched sitting on the bench all those years. That's really what it felt Um, like every time I got a hit on my golf, I was just lucky. I was just lucky, and I just kept hitting the ball. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Oh no, no, I was putting, I was relaying it back to you. That you're supposed
Uh,
to take over.
no, 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 but I agree. Like that I just don't think. Okay, so where I was going with that was the next year. I was in swim. I think I got my 53 down to like either like a 29.3 or like a 28.8. Like it wasn't nearly as much of a like I did like great. I broke 30 seconds on my first one, but I didn't
Yeah,
improve a ton, right? I mean, maybe some other people see. I don't even know because maybe some people in the swim community would consider that like a big jump
massive
in a
improvement.
year. Um, but I don't know. I was expecting to be like hitting 27, 26, right? You
Right, right.
see, and I see this is where I think it ties back to the podcast.
Exactly. I was just
I
about to.
was I wasn't expecting to have done something like break 30 seconds on my first 50 free because I have a friend, the one who got me into swim. He'd
Hmm.
been swimming his entire life and he hadn't done that yet. Like he was always like hovering like 30 and a half. And then here
Right.
comes Julian, like I just do it, right? Um, and then shoot, see, I was on a really good path and then I just
No, no, no.
diverged.
I got it. So in
Um,
terms. Oh wait, you got it. You got it.
Also like on the first episode of the podcast, I was not expecting the success of 400 plus views and getting like I don't know how many subscribers we got on the first episode, like 30 or 40. I was not expecting
Yeah.
that at all. And then all of a sudden, like with our other videos, of course, we got new viewers, we got more subscribers, stuff like that. Like relatively small improvements in comparison to the first one.
Hmm.
Um, Now all of a sudden I'm not as pleased with how we're doing. I'm not
Yeah.
doing a very good job articulating this. Maybe you can
No, I think
take
it's
care of it.
that sense of that first success being something so great that
Yeah.
it that oh, that first success
You're
being
gonna have
so
to speak
great.
up a little bit.
I know I'm gonna
I'm just kidding.
that first success being so great that you expected the improvement that you do between that first meet and your subsequent meets to be you'd cut 4 more seconds off your time. You'd cut
Yeah,
2 more seconds off your time right away.
yeah,
But when you only cut zero point 0.5 seconds off your time or zero point 0.7, it was almost just like, oh, should I even continue swimming? Like,
yeah,
is this my peak? Is this really my peak?
yeah.
My first one being my peak when I feel like I'm getting better at swimming. I've
Mhm.
been swimming more. I've been putting in more work,
Yeah,
but the improvements are just not. They're just not comparable to that first one of I broke
yeah,
30. And for the podcast, we broke 400 views that first one.
yeah.
And it's like now we're getting more comfortable talking in front of the camera. We're upgrading the equipment.
Like these are improvements, but why aren't we feeling as fulfilled,
Podcast,
right?
aren't we feeling as fulfilled? Why aren't we getting those same 400 plus views on the
Yeah.
video? Why aren't we getting 1,000 listeners on the podcast every time? We're
Yeah.
making all these improvements. We feel like we're getting better, but the numbers don't match up. The audio is
Yeah.
not matching the visuals. What's going on? And I think that that feeling is what's it's almost like mirrored in terms of the podcast success
Mhm.
and the success that you had in swimming.
Yeah. I think what it is when there's no standard or expectations, your first crack at something is always going to seem like a success, right? But going back to what I was saying earlier, if there is no like work put into it beforehand, can you call that success, right?
Exactly.
It kind of I mean, it really just sounds like a first attempt. If we're being honest, right? We're just lucky that we have great friends that would like wanted to check out the podcast, and there are like people who are curious, right? Like around 400 people who are just curious in the podcast. That's what they did. That was not a product of our own work. People
No,
being curious.
that just
So
happened.
A, why do we feel like the first episode was a success? And B, why do we feel like all the work that we're putting in now is not a success, right?
Yeah,
Because while the numbers may not show improvement, because that's like our only tangible way of seeing improvement, right? Downloads, views, likes, subscribers, stuff like that. We are improving in many more ways. Like you and I have been doing a lot more structuring in the back and planning. We're now planning further ahead with future episodes, planning on bringing in guests. We're talking, we're getting more comfortable. Like you said, we're upgrading equipment. A lot of stuff is going on in the background, but the numbers aren't matching up. So it's interesting. With no work, we see success because we have numbers, right?
right.
But when we put in the work and there are no numbers, but there is less quantifiable, less concrete, discrete success figures to look at. Things like quality and planning, things like that. Things that can be quantified. We put in the
Mhm.
work, the numbers, feel like we aren't. Dichotomy
It's
in
crazy.
that is just so
That dichotomy is insane. I think it almost applies also to the music industry in terms of someone being a one hit wonder and
yeah,
like that kind of instant success that a lot of people see a lot of different artists get, where their first song or their first album is the pinnacle. Like people think that's the pinnacle of their career, top notch, top tier quality. This is their banger, right?
yeah,
And then their second thing comes out, and everybody's like, "Whoa, I don't know, man. That it's not really hitting like the first one did. I don't
yeah,
know. I don't know if I mess with it like that anymore." And it's
yeah,
like always trying to like that first success is what everyone compares everything else that they put out and everything else that they do towards. Even if that person made that first song in the studio in like an hour and just put it
yeah,
out and that happened to be the one that blew up, right?
yeah,
But for that second project, they have more features. They spent more time in the studio. They've really put a lot of time into the planning and getting advice
maybe they
from
try and like
their
be
mentors
more
and their
artistic.
peers.
Like maybe in the
Right.
first one they were just doing something that they knew was gonna like make them go viral, and this time they're like, oh, now that I have fan base and a following, I'm
I'm
gonna try
gonna
and put some of
just
my own
put my
artistic
heart and
touch.
soul into this. Exactly.
Yeah, and people
And
don't
then it
want
doesn't
that.
hit the same. And people don't want it. And I think with social media especially, just being able to see all of those numbers right away,
Mhm.
um, it just takes a toll on people.
You see, it's interesting because I feel like there's an inverse relationship as far as our podcast goes. Like views have been going down, right? But for the people that have stuck with us from the beginning and continue to watch and listen to every single podcast, thank you so much. We really do appreciate
We
you.
really do
We've been getting
appreciate you all.
we've been getting more some substantive feedback, um, and we've been hearing about more of the impact that we've had on you through the podcast. And while maybe like the comments that are like, "Oh, just check out your first episode. Like what you guys are doing. Good luck." Those and the comments and the subscribers, maybe those are going down in frequency, right?
Right.
But as far as the frequency and the value of people saying, "Hey, you really changed the way I thought about this." Like my brother told me that he didn't know that you could love a school that much, and that it could give you that kind of feeling. And other people have reached out saying that I want to love my school as much as I love yours. Okay, I'm trying not to pat ourselves in the back right now because I'm also humble, right? But like inspiring people in that way and getting them to think. Um,
But the fact that we have to tell
sorry, I don't
ourselves
know where I
that,
was going.
no, the fact
Yeah,
that we have to tell ourselves that that's how we should be measuring our success by, instead of just looking at the numbers, looking at the views, looking at all these other things
yeah,
that may not be as comparable to that first episode,
hmm
in itself tells us that even our mentalities are just not right.
yeah.
And maybe,
Like the substance behind success isn't like, to us success is the numbers, right? But there's no
right,
substance to that. There's substance to the people reaching out and telling us, "Oh, you've changed my thinking. You've inspired me. You make me feel less alone." Yeah,
those types of conversations and those people reaching out, and even people reaching out wanting to know more information about the school because they're thinking about applying from
yeah,
hearing our podcast. Like the
yeah,
power in that, that should be the success that drives us to continue making these episodes and really see this all the way through to
yeah,
where whatever it is that may be. But we're still hung up on those numbers at
yeah.
the end of the day, and it's
But
crazy.
it's interesting because we talk about this podcast being a documentation of our evolution of thinking. This is us putting it out for everyone that like this is the process um of motivation that we have to continually put ourselves through, you know? And this
Yeah.
isn't to say like we aren't grateful for the support that we've gotten so far, but like it's a lot of work, you know? And if maybe after the first episode we're like, wow, 400 views, if the content and the quality is only getting better, then we should improve, or then there should be
Yeah. Then
there
we
should
should
be
then we should
there should be
improve. You
feedback,
said it.
right? It like we should be getting more views and more comments and wider reach, and that's just not happening. Um, but it takes like those check-ins and those reminders that, yeah, well, everyone else may think that there's a fast track, um, and that just because the first one does well, that everyone's going to do well, um, and that we've even worked for or deserved those 400 views to begin with. Like that isn't to say that what we're doing here is a good thing, or it isn't to say that we're not doing the right thing, or it isn't worth something, or that we still
Right.
aren't.
I didn't think I'd learn as much about myself
Mhm,
at this stage in the podcast.
me neither.
Like I felt like just in these few recording sessions that we've done in just this amount of time, in less than a month
Yeah,
of starting this, that I've learned so much about myself just talking to you and putting it out on the internet.
me too.
It's wild.
Like just going through the exercise of thinking, right? Um, and confronting these things that it's just difficult to put words to, right? I know we
Yeah.
make it look super easy, but these things are really difficult to talk about. Like they're already difficult to confront mentally, because no one knows how they feel about certain things, especially us being so young, right? We still have a lot to figure out, but we might want to tell people why the it's a little different right now. So
Yeah.
my computer is terrible, and if it's on for too long, then the screen turns completely black. So we had to stop the recording and take a break so my computer could have a breather. But now we're back.
Now we're back. Yeah. That after each time we record, that we just feel better. Just
Yeah,
even if it's for 10 minutes, even if it's for 20 minutes, that we just have a smile on our face about what we just talked about. And I think
because
that's
I
really
feel
the most
fulfilled.
important thing. Yeah.
But in accepting that, see, once you accept see, once you're happy with the dirt of your toes, I don't know, maybe that's a bit of a stretch. But right now, I'm thinking maybe this whole time we've been thinking about success with a degree of finality to it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
success isn't a dead end. Once like you go down this road and you reach the end of the road, um, that isn't success. You can
Right.
still be successful and have road ahead of you. I think the balance in finding success and being fulfilled is in recognizing, like what you were saying earlier, with what you've accomplished, but also recognizing what's ahead of you. And in that way, I think we've created a hybrid or a composite horizon, you know? Um,
Yeah.
at least I'm changing the way that I'm thinking about success now. Um, because you think about success in like the show business in professional sports. You're saying
Mm-hmm.
you've made it, you've arrived, right?
Right.
That's saying that once you've reached that, your journey's over. And I think that's what turns people off about success a lot of the time. Not success in the idea of being successful, but like success in that now it's over. Now you're done. Um, which is why people like myself think, no, I can't recognize where I'm at right now because if I do, then I forget about what's ahead of me, which isn't the case, right?
Right.
When we were talking about it earlier, I was thinking about an example in physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say you're a ball, right? And you're
Okay.
100 meters above the ground, for example. You have all of this potential energy, right? Because you're at the
Yeah.
top right now. You get more successful the further down you fall because now you're increasing your kinetic energy.
Okay.
But when you increase your kinetic energy, right, you become lower to the ground and your potential energy increases. Once you reach the bottom and you hit the ground, you might be at max speed, but all of a sudden now you have no potential energy.
Right.
And in my head, I think that's the way that I was thinking about success this whole time. Like once you've reached success, once you hit the ground, it's really like it's almost like a death, Like there's nothing more to like you've lost all your potential. I
Right.
think the exciting thing about success is that you had potential and you reached it. But I don't think success is about arriving somewhere. I think it's about the journey as opposed to the destination. Is what I'm trying to say. Like I think the idea of success being a place where you arrive takes a lot of the inspiration out of the idea or the prospect of success. Because
Yeah.
once you get there, like
That's
what else
it.
is there to work for? You know? Um,
It sets up a lot of people for a feeling of hopelessness almost, because once they feel that they've reached that destination, once they feel like they've reached success, that's
mhm.
it. And
Yeah.
so I think that's really where, oh man, to bring it all the way back, that's where that phrase "money can't buy happiness" comes from. Because I think money is one of those things where it's like they set a goal that they almost think that they'll never be able to achieve,
hmm
so that is their finite destination and that becomes their finite end. And so when they actually do achieve that goal, mentally they've gone to the point where they see themselves as successful and they see themselves getting to that destination.
Interesting. Tying that back to the podcast, it makes me wonder what our idea of success will be. I know we talked about it earlier with the amount of fulfillment that it brings us, but I was thinking, like, could your example with money relate to the amount of views, right? We might get more views, but like that shouldn't be our measure of success, right? Because we said the way we see or the value that we see in what we have to say is the way that it affects other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now what happens if tons of people view it and all of them have their lives changed because of it, right?
Yeah.
Are we successful then? I just feel like even though that's more valuable than a view, it becomes cheaper as as you do more and more of it, right? So it
Right.
makes me wonder whether or not success needs to be something that's bigger and better, right? Um, and then it made me wonder, is our success in just continually learning more about ourselves by talking about this? Because right now, our idea of success is the views and the people that we reach and the way that we make them feel. But say that we one day became like Joe Rogan type of viral and we had that type of reach and effect on people, even
Mhm.
that would become very, not cheap, but it would just, it'd
We'd
be very
almost become
frequent,
desensitized to it.
desensitized. That's the right word.
Yeah.
Um, so at that point, what is our success, right? Um, and maybe with each episode, we would just learn one little thing about ourselves. Or not, okay, I don't even want to put a number on it. We just learn something new about ourselves, right?
Right.
We're not saying like, oh, we're going to change this many people's lives. We're going to get this many more views. We're just doing the same thing every single time. We're learning something new about ourselves every single time. Is that our success?
I think so. And I think, not to say that there'll ever be a point where we won't learn something new about ourselves,
Mhm.
but I feel like when the time comes that, oh man, I don't know.
Yeah. Because look, this goes back to the whole horizon thing, right?
Yeah.
Because like what we were talking about before, finding a balance between appreciation and ambition. Oh, oh.
Oh man, we're so immature, man.
At what point, like you said, when do we stop learning about ourselves? Or maybe when do we, maybe even when do we feel desensitized to the gratification that we get from learning more about ourselves?
And I don't know
Tying
if
it
there
all
ever,
the way back to existentialism.
yeah, I don't know if there'll ever be a point where we really get to that point of we don't learn something new about ourselves every time.
Yeah. Maybe the feeling of success comes from never reaching the top.
Yeah.
Because you're running the more, because like we were saying earlier, your definition of success becomes different as you grow, right?
Hmm.
Initially for us, it was views and subscribers. Now we're thinking it's the way we affect people. Now we're thinking it's what we get out of it. As we do more and more of each thing, like you end up running out of each, as if it's a resource almost. Like you use
Yeah.
all that up to give you that gratification, then you go to the next thing. Use all that up. And if you really reach success, success means that you've run out of all those resources, which is very existential. Like if that's what success is, then what's the point of pursuing it in the first place?
Because it's something that you'll never be able to ultimately reach at all. Ooh.
Maybe it's just in seeing how far you can go. The gratification of seeing how far you can go. Maybe recognizing success comes with first knowing that you'll never reach it. You can only be as successful as you can be. And that's what's so alluring to people who strive for success. I'm given this. Let's see what I can make of it. How far can I go?
Yeah.
So does that make it meaningless or more meaningful?
Oh, I think that's where we just have to leave it.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Let's leave it open-ended the way it started.
Yeah.
This would be okay for those of you who watch every single episode. It would be really interesting if you could send us just some ideas, what you think about what we said, maybe how you view success. It'd be an interesting. This would be a topic that I would be more than happy to have a second episode for. Thank you, everyone, for watching the 5th episode of the Two Islands podcast. As you said earlier, please feel free to reach out with any thoughts and opinions you might have. As you can probably tell, there's a feeling of overwhelming confusion when it comes to such open-ended topics. So as Richie and I find more clarity in talking to each other about this, I know we'll find more clarity with talking to you more about this. Please feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to have that conversation. Maybe have a part two. And yeah, if you're listening on Spotify, hello, or thank you. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, hello. What's the other one?
Overcast. We can't forget about the Overcast people. We
Our
can't.
Overcasters.
We're
How's it
growing
going?
on that platform. We're growing like crazy. I don't know. It's crazy. It's wild. Shout out to you all.
But yeah, with that, thank you for watching the 5th episode. Shoots.
Shoots.